The Titans have until Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central Time to cut their roster down to 53 players. And Justin, they've already released 16 guys. We are going to run through today our final 53-man roster projection. Knowing that things could change when the waiver process hits, we're going to run through our surprise cuts, the guys who have already been cut, surprise players who make the team, and we have a full practice squad prediction for you as well. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. Justin Melo has been busy this morning. Breaking news for the Titans. How's it going, my friend?
Doing well, thanks. It was a busy day on Monday as we started first initial wave of cuts. Titans end up cutting 16 guys. Got, of course, a number of moves still to make on Tuesday. So, head on a swivel. I'm paying attention to the phone here.
Yeah, no doubt about that. You guys should all be following Justin on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call that platform these days at JustinM_NFL, because I'm sure you're going to have more. These 2 days are like your Super Bowl. I guess this and that period right after the draft when you're breaking all the UDFA news is like you get 2 Super Bowls. That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, like I said, it was hectic today. I mean, when the first one came in to me, it was totally unexpected. I didn't know that they were going to start this process today. That first one came in, I started working the phone immediately. I think for the next 3 hours, I think was the span of, I broke a bunch of them. But it was certainly busy and unexpected. I mean, I had my head on a swivel. You always know they could start a little early. But when that first one comes in unexpectedly, it's kind of like, oh crap, here we go. I knew it wasn't going to be just one. So I immediately went to work.
Yeah, there you go. So we are going to run through the 16 players who got cut when we get there. We're going position by position today, projecting out our 53-man rosters. And full disclosure, I only have 51 players on my 53-man roster. Obviously, the Titans will end up with 53 by Tuesday at 3 p.m. And then the process of waiver claims will start. And by Wednesday at 3 p.m., there might be 2 new players, there might be 5 new players, there might be 7 new players. We have no idea how the Titans are going to use this first priority in the waiver claim. All we know is that they will add at least somebody. So I left 2 open spots on my 53-man roster for waiver claims, even though there's probably going to be more than 2. You went to 53 exactly, meaning that you have a few placeholder guys, and we'll hit those as we go when we get there. We're going to start with the quarterback position, which to me is as cut and dry as any position on the roster. We're both keeping Cam Ward and Brandon Allen. We both have Trevor Siemian cut, but brought back on the practice squad. I don't really think there's much more that needs to be said, Justin.
No, correct. I mean, it's going to be Cam Ward and Brandon Allen. I think Siemian is an NFL caliber quarterback. Makes sense to add him to the practice squad. Maybe they go younger there. A lot of teams see the quarterback on the practice squad as a developmental guy. You take that time to work behind the scenes. But either way, if it's not Siemian, I mean, Siemian's probably the better option, but sometimes it's a UDFA that got cut elsewhere that you think has some tools. But I think this is going to be Cam Ward. I mean, know that it's going to be Cam Ward and Brandon Allen. Is there a chance they look at the waiver wire and search for an upgrade on Brandon Allen? I guess that's within the realm of possibility. But he knows Brian Callahan's offense. He's been here all summer. He's helped teach and mentor Cam Ward to a degree. Ultimately, I don't think they'll replace Brandon Allen. I think he'll be Cam Ward's number 2 this year.
I agree with that 100%. So we're going to move on right away to the running back position, where we have these same 4 guys making the roster with one small caveat. We both have Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, Julius Chestnut, and Kalel Mullings, the obvious 4 making the roster. I have Tajay Spears on the active 53-man roster in my projection. You have Tajay Spears moving to injured reserve, meaning it would free up an additional roster spot. Terry McCormick did report on Monday morning that he said it's, quote, likely that Spears does end up on IR. I might end up being wrong by keeping him there, but if that's the case, then I just have 50 players instead of 53, and that's fine too, because then I have 3 open spots for waiver claims.
This is a tricky situation, right? He's dealing with a high ankle sprain. We know that's a multi-week thing. First of all, it's not great for a running back to have an ankle injury this early. On top of it, he's one who's had his injuries, as we all know. He's banged up a lot last year. So, I'm guessing here, but I think he misses at least 2 games. And I think it's 50-50 that he's available for week 3. Teams don't like having guys on the 53 that aren't healthy, especially initially. They're obsessed with having guys who are available. Yes, of course, not all of them are active on game day. You only got 48, so you can make that argument. But I think there's a decent chance he starts on IR. Either way, we've got the same running backs, right? We've got Chestnut and Mullings being the others. I think Chestnut's run hard this preseason. I think they can get by with him for a few games. Now, again, I think he's one of those guys where I don't have him as a placeholder, Chestnut, but I think it's within the realm of possibility that they look to replace him on the waiver wire with a guy that's maybe got more of a 3-down skill set. They didn't make any moves here on Monday, but we both have them cutting Jordan Mims and Jamar Jefferson. I've got Mims on the practice squad. I think you do as well, if I recall correctly. Both of us don't have Jefferson there. But both of them. Oh, you do have Jefferson on the practice squad. He's played well in the preseason. He really has. So we'll see what happens here. They've obviously got multiple moves to make at running back on Tuesday.
I'll say something here. So the Titans, obviously, they went into Monday with 90 guys. They cut 16 already. Do the math. That's 74 remaining. Do the math again. They're going to get down to 53, and they have 16 practice squad spots, plus a practice squad exemption spot if they add Thomas Odukoya through the International Pathway Player Program. So do all that math, and that means that of the 74 guys remaining, if the Titans don't make any waiver claims, which they will, but at least going into Tuesday afternoon, only 4 of the remaining players on the roster will not make the 53 or the practice squad, assuming the entire practice squad is made up of guys that have been in camp this whole time and not signed when they get cut by somebody else, which is certainly a possibility. But that's one of the reasons I have both running backs on the practice squad here, Jordan Mims and Jamar Jefferson, is that the other, I'm going to leave 4 guys as we go through this off the roster entirely. And I feel like Mims and Jefferson are in the best 16 that aren't on the 53. And you just want to keep good players around when you can, especially with the fact that Spears and Mullings to some extent are already dealing with some minor injuries, minor for Mullings, a little more major for Spears. So more running backs, the better there. And running backs, you might be able to find some on waivers, especially more experienced guys, like you said, more 3-down skill set guys. But I think for now, I'm sticking with the players who have been in the system for longer. Let's move on to the wide receiver position, and this is where we can announce our first cuts. The Titans already released 3 guys from their wide receiver room: Jaquan Jackson, TJ Sheffield, and Matt Landers. Matt Landers was waived with an injury. I think we saw him in a walking boot recently, so it's no surprise there. If nobody claims him, I believe he will revert back to the Titans injured reserve, and he can just sort of be stashed there for the year, and they can look to continue developing him, a bigger-bodied guy on the outside, which leaves 9 receivers eligible to make the team. And you and I each have 7. This is sort of media consensus at this point. Everyone has the same projection here. It's Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Van Jefferson, Alec Ayamaner, Chimere Dike, Bryce Oliver, and James Prochet. That leaves Xavier Restrepo and Mason Kinsey off the roster. However, I'm projecting that they both end up back on the practice squad, and I believe you are as well. It is interesting to note that Restrepo was not part of today's 16 cuts. That might mean that he makes the roster. That would still be a surprise to all of us at this point if he did. I think it's much more likely that they are holding on to him today so that they can get him back on the practice squad.
Well, same thing with Mason Kinsey, right? Like, he wasn't part of the 16 cuts, and I wouldn't go as far to say that means anything, right? Because they're going to make a couple more moves here. They're not carrying 9, obviously. So we've got the same 7. We're in agreement. I mean, Bryce Oliver's played his way into being a lock. I think James Prochet's played his way into something very similar. He's been good at receiver. I think he's their best special teams returner, especially at punt returner, that is. So we'll see what happens with Restrepo and Kinsey tomorrow. And you and I will be live at some point to hopefully go through a couple more of those moves. I think 1 p.m. Central is our plan to go live. So you guys stay tuned to that. I'm sure we'll have a couple more moves trickle in by then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, be here Tuesday, 1 p.m. Central Time. We will be live, and I'm sure there will be moves Tuesday morning. We might get some moves live. You might get some breaking news live. That would be the dream for our podcast, but we'll see what happens. Regardless, we'll be here to talk through everything that's happened up to that point. And then Wednesday, we'll be back again to really run through everything after the waiver claims process. For now, we will move on to the tight end position, where, again, you and I are in sync here. 3 tight ends making the roster. We both project Chigakonkwo, Gunnar Helm, and David Martin Robinson. We're both cutting Josh Wiley, Thomas Odukoya, and Drake Dabney. I am bringing Thomas Odukoya back onto the practice squad. What about you?
I'll say this. I may or may not be dealing with some intel here, but if Odukoya doesn't make the 53, I don't know that I'd hold my breath on him getting onto the practice squad. I think we'll see what happens there. TBD, I guess. But Drake Dabney, to be honest, maybe one of the underdogs who survived the first day, right? Like I think most people would have guessed if they were going to cut 16 on Monday that he'd be a part of that. Maybe he's a practice squad guy. Like maybe they like him more than we all realize. Josh Wiley, I mean, it feels kind of done, right? Like I don't even know that there's a future on the practice squad there. I just feel like they've been pretty disappointed with him, and if he doesn't make the 53, which neither you or I expect him to, even though you could probably make the argument that he's one of the best 16, I think there would be mutual interest on both sides to just move on at that point. So we'll see what happens there. And we've got the same three on the roster. Again, I'll say what I said about Chestnut. Like, I'm not predicting that they make a move here, but I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. Like, if something better becomes available than like David Martin Robinson, maybe tight end 3 is actually a waiver claim. But I'm not at a place where I'm comfortable enough to. I'll predict that for many guys. So don't say that I won't do it. I'm going to do it for many, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not comfortable enough to do it at tight end, but I think that possibility is open.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. And Josh Wiley, I would say to this point, is our most surprising projected cut. If you've been following the team closely since training camp started, it may not be that surprising. But if you just like look at it from a 30,000 foot angle, Josh Wiley, a recent draft pick who last season you and I and many other people were projecting would overtake Chigakonkwo as the tight end 1. Obviously, that never came to fruition. And now we are predicting the opposite. We're predicting that he gets cut and is not even a part of the 2025 Titans in any way going forward. So let's move on, Justin, to the offensive line. We've split this one up into offensive tackle and interior offensive line, and we have the same 4 tackles being kept. The obvious ones, the starters, Dan Moore and J.C. Latham. We both have John Ojukwu and Oli Udoh making the team. I have Jalen Duncan and Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon making the practice squad. You have Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon making the practice squad. You could always change your mind and put Jalen Duncan there too. I'll be honest with you guys, I did not have Jalen Duncan on my practice squad on Monday morning. But then 16 cuts happened, and a few of the cuts I had projected to my practice squad. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they bring back someone who was cut today and put them on the practice squad. It seems a little odd to do that when you could cut somebody else that you're not planning to bring back. So that's why I changed my mind on some of these. And Jalen Duncan is the beneficiary of a guy who I now have on my practice squad.
Yeah, I'll say, Oli Udoh just seemed to play his way into that swing tackle role. I didn't see that coming. He was signed, I think it was in April, alongside a couple other veterans to very little fanfare. And none of those guys that signed on the same day have a chance to make the roster. In fact, one of them got cut today already. But he just worked his way up that depth chart. I think he's played in like 50 career NFL games, 2019 draft pick. He's just hung around, and it seems like he's the number 3. I've got John Ojukwu as the final tackle there because they seem to really value his very hyper-specific skill set, if you will, where they like to use him as like the 6th blocker in jumbo packages. In fact, they did that in the preseason the other night, I think on 4th and 1, where they brought him in and ran the ball up the middle and converted that attempt. So, he was my last one on. I'll tell you why, because I don't think he's the actual swing tackle. I think that's probably Oli Udoh. I think there's a possibility where they could cut Ojukwu, add him to the practice squad, and then elevate him throughout the first few weeks of the season before eventually adding him to the 53. Like, there's a lot of roster math and construction that goes into this. And I'll tell you why I think that's a possibility when we get to the interior linemen in a second. But for now, because I expected Ojukwu to be on this team week 1, whether it's through the 53 or through an elevation, I had room for him on my predicted 53.
And I don't have anything to add because I feel the exact same way. We know they want to use him in those jumbo sets, but we don't know if they have someone else that they could also use if the math doesn't shake out correctly.
And I do have Crenshaw-Dixon on the practice squad, like you said. I think they really like the developmental skill set, gave him a lot of money and undrafted free agency. With Duncan, you have him. I don't. I just think they're like Wiley. I think they're kind of over it.
I think that could totally be the case. And again, I just put him on here because I had a spot now. And like this could totally be somebody else gets cut from somewhere else and that team doesn't bring him to their practice squad, or they see a better opportunity in Nashville and the Titans want to add him. Like, not all 16 of these guys. And if Thomas Odukoya is not included, then it is only 16. Not all 16 of these guys are going to come from the Titans' current roster, but most of them will. So I'm just like, shooting as many shots as I can. It doesn't mean I'm going to get 100% of them right, but I put Duncan on here. Easton Freeze also reported that there's a shot Duncan gets traded for a late round pick. If they can flip him for anything, that would be awesome. We'll see how that shakes out. Moving to interior offensive line, we have the same 6, Justin, which means we're both keeping 10 total offensive linemen. We're both keeping Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Kevin Zeitler. Those are the obvious ones. They're starters. Corey Levin could be a starter for a week or two at the beginning of the season, depending on Lloyd Cushenberry's recovery. Blake Hance was the first guard off the bench during the preseason, started the final game with Cam Ward with Kevin Zeitler out. And Jackson Slater, they drafted this year, a potentially future starter on the interior of that O-line. Seems pretty cut and dry. There are 2 more cuts to report here that were announced this morning. Sam Mustipher and Arlington Hambright, which leaves just Andrew Rupsich and Brendan James for us as predicted cuts on Tuesday. I have Andrew Rupsich back on my practice squad, as do you. We both have Brendan James sayonaraing his time with the Titans.
Yeah, Rupsich made the initial 53 last year. I think people forget that, but they just got better on the interior, I think, this offseason, adding Jackson Slater and Blake Hance as well. So we've got the same number. 10's a bit heavy. I debated. So the point that I promised to follow up on, because Blake Hance has that 4-position versatility, tackle and guard, you really need 3 guys that can play tackle on the bench. I don't know that you do. That's why I'm a little iffy on the Ajoku prediction. I mean, hey, maybe it's Ajoku sticks and it's Udo that's cut and we're surprised. But as of now, I got all 3, Blake Hance, Udo, and Ajoku on the roster. But if they want to go with 9, I do think it would be one of those tackles one of the non-Hance tackles that would get cut, because they're going to keep Hance to play on the interior as well. So we'll see what happens there. But Rupsich, back to him, NFL caliber blocker, started the first preseason game, made the 53 last year, as I said. I think he's definitely a practice squatter if he doesn't make this team.
Yeah, I think John Ojukwu is the one on the chopping block if they decide to only go with 9 there. I agree with what you said. That takes us to the end of the offense, Justin. I have 26 guys on my roster from the offense out of 53. You have 25, but you also actually have 26 because you have Tajay Spears making the team just on injured reserve. So we're pretty much in lockstep here. The only difference is Spears. And for me, again, if Spears ends up on IR, in my version of the roster, that's just an extra waiver claim you don't have to cut anybody for. So, we're pretty much in perfect alignment here. We're going to flip over to the defensive side of the ball. But real quick, a reminder to everyone that Saturday is coming up. What's Saturday? Saturday is August 31st. August 31st is the last day that you can order the Titans of the South 2025 special edition with that bonus chapter about the 2025 offseason. And if you order this version of the book, they will throw in a free gift, an illustrated player trading card of the Titans' new rookie quarterback. I cannot imagine a better way to celebrate your Titans fandom, a better object to decorate a room or a shelf, especially if it's like a man cave or even just a coffee table or a shelf like I have behind me where the book sits over my left shoulder every time we record a podcast. Check out titansofthesouth.com until August 31st. You can order this edition. It's only $25, which includes free shipping, and this is your last chance to get this item before it's not available ever again. So, Justin, you had something about shipping you wanted me to hit.
As of today, so as of today is when I believe copies started going out. That's what I believe I was told by the publisher, like this week, focusing on shipping them out. Don't know how long it'll take. Shouldn't take long, though. Mom and pop operation. We've got hundreds and hundreds of copies to ship. You guys have really supported this so far. We really appreciate that, considering it was something, we decided to do as a re-release to include the player illustrated trading card, which is going to blow you guys away. Give us about a week or so to get through the shipping. And then if you're one of the late orders, of course, it'll be some extended time, not probably another week or so before yours gets shipped out if you haven't bought it yet. But really excited about this process. Plan to have them all out the door within the next week if you've ordered already. You guys have been dropping your comments, which I love to say. You got your shipping confirmation. You received your email from the publisher. We've been confirming your shipping addresses before we send them out because 5 of you have already responded and said you moved since you order it. That's why we do that. The publisher learned their lesson from a previous book they didn't do that with. So as you guys confirm those shipping addresses, that book's going to get to you real soon. I can't wait for you guys to see it.
Me neither. And if you haven't ordered yours yet, titansofthesouth.com. You have until Saturday, August 31st. I also want to just give a quick shout out to all of our listeners and all of our followers and all of our viewers on YouTube for continuing to support this channel, for continuing to help us out as we strive for our goal of 4,750 subscribers. We're trying to hit by the end of week 1. That's just under 200 subscribers. That's a lofty goal for us to achieve in the span of like 2.5 to 3 weeks here, Justin. So we're really asking all of you guys to help us out by mashing that subscribe button. If you tune into this channel, even if it's just a semi-regular basis, give us a subscribe. Help us out. Hit that subscribe button. Also, remember to like this video and drop a comment below. We appreciate all you guys. We also appreciate Sinkers Beverages. If you go to sinkersbeverages.com, you can join the in-crowd there. In-crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Plus, Sinkers Beverages is on Uber Eats, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. Check out their website. We appreciate them. And we appreciate all of you. Justin, let's turn our attention to the defense here, and we'll start with the defensive tackle position, where we are close but not completely aligned. You have 5 defensive tackles. I only have 4. I'm going to be pretty light on defense here as we go through this, remembering that I only have 51 players. So this is the first position that I'm a little light at. But we both have Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, and James Lynch making the team. I think those 4 are stone cold locks. You have Carlos Watkins making the team. I do not. We also had 3 players cut from this position on Monday: Joe Graziano, TJ Smith, and our very own Justin Melo broke that Josiah Bronson would also be released.
Yeah, you just skipped a step because I've got Carlos Watkins as a placeholder. I think they could look to make a claim here. There's probably going to be a better option than what they have. As of now, they're going into Tuesday with 4 guys still competing for that spot. Like, I didn't think Josiah Bronson or TJ Smith were going to make it. But I did think that spot's either like Carlos Watkins, Timmy Horn, or one of the UDFAs in Cam Horsley or Isaiah Rakes. So we'll see what happens there. They got multiple moves to make on Tuesday at D tackle. They might make one more Wednesday. I think this is a spot where we could see a waiver claim.
Yeah, that's what I'm fully expecting. That's why I only kept 4 guys on the roster. I will say, of the 4 guys I left off the roster who haven't been cut, Timmy Horn, Carlos Watkins, Cam Horsley, Isaiah Rakes, I put 3 of them on the practice squad. All of them but Carlos Watkins, who you have on the roster. I did that because I feel like practice squad, you can have veterans on there now. Nowadays, the rules have changed. You can have up to 6 guys who are legit veterans in the league. But I feel like they probably want to use the practice squad. Given the timeline with Cam Ward and the draft, develop, retain approach that they've been preaching, I went with 3 guys that I view as more developmental. I know Timmy Horn is not necessarily on the same level as Cam Horsley and Isaiah Rakes, but those are the 3 guys I have on the practice squad. You did it a little differently. You have Carlos Watkins on the roster, Horsley and Rakes on the practice squad, and Timmy Horn, bye-bye. But like you said, Watkins is a placeholder. But we'll see what they do at this position, because I definitely think they will add at least 1, if not multiple bodies here, whether that's to the active roster and or the practice squad. I think this is a position they see themselves improving through the waiver process here over the next few days. Let's move on to the edge position here, where we're pretty aligned, but we have one key difference that we're going to talk about. The 4 obvious ones that we both have on the roster are your starters: Draymond Jones, Arden Key, Femi Oladejo. 2 of the 3 of those guys are starters. We're not 100% sure if Femi is a starter yet or if he's a rotational player. We'll see how that goes. And then we both have Jihad Ward, who they signed, halfway through training camp on this roster to replace Lorenzo Carter, who retired during right before training camp started, I think. And then we have a situation where I have 1 player on the practice squad and 1 player on the roster, and you have the opposite. So I have Ali Gay on the roster and Jalen Harrell on the practice squad. You have Jalen Harrell on the roster and Ali Gay on the practice squad. 1 player from the edge position was let go today, Desmond Evans, the UDFA, and that news came to us courtesy of you also.
I appreciate that. Well, splitting hairs again, because, I've got Harrell over Gay on the initial 53, but this is a big-time placeholder spot, right? I think both of these guys probably end up on the practice squad, and the 5th edge is currently not on the roster. Also, some good opportunities in free agency, right? Like a Jadeveon Clowney, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith. Either way, I think they're adding 1 edge rusher to this roster. Could be a waiver claim, could be a free agent. Some people say they might add 2 or 3. That would surprise me, because I don't think you need 6 edge rushers on this 53-man roster. I think you need 5. And I think Ward is going to stick as the number 4. I think they like his body. He's big, he's long, he stops the run on early downs. But we know this room is concerning, potentially the worst position room on the entire team. maybe one of the worst position rooms in the NFL, in all honesty, certainly at the pass rushing position. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday and Wednesday, but I ultimately think that they're going to try to get another guy in here that's not currently on the team.
Yeah, I'm with you. Full agreement there. The reason I went with Ollie Gay over Jalen Harrell is because he does fit that bigger body type like you're talking about Jihad Ward has, and Jalen Harrell doesn't necessarily have that. But with a reserve player that they're trying to develop here, or with, in the case that they both end up on the practice squad anyway, that body type may not matter. We will see what happens. Moving on to the inside linebacker position, where I made potentially my boldest move of my projection here. I only kept 3 inside linebackers. You kept 4. I just didn't feel like there were 4 that were worth keeping. Like, I only feel like 3 of these guys deserve to be on an NFL roster. So I kept Cody Barton, James Williams, Cedric Gray. You kept those 3, and you also included Curtis Jacobs. We had another player released on Monday from this position group, Amari Burney. And then I decided, I didn't have anyone from this position group on my initial practice squad. But again, a couple of the guys that I did have were cut today. So I had to make an audible. I had to call a Music City audible. And I put Brian Asamoah and Curtis Jacobs on the practice squad. You had Amari Burney on your initial practice squad prediction, and I'm wondering if you've changed that after he was waived today.
Yeah, probably. I think if you don't survive the first day of cuts, that's probably not going to happen. I'm with you again. You skip a step. I think 4th linebacker here is probably a placeholder. So I have Curtis Jacobs there. I think they got to claim at least one guy at this position. I won't rule out, maybe I should have had Asamoah on the 53. And the only reason I won't totally rule out that he actually makes it and sticks is because he's played a lot of special team snaps over the last couple of years for the Minnesota Vikings. I think he was their 3rd most used special teams player last year in Minnesota. So maybe he sticks. Maybe he's a placeholder. I think practice squad at least, but I don't really like the back end of this room at all. So for me, I hope the 4th linebacker is one that comes from outside the organization. There's going to be some good guys that get cut, better than what they have on the roster. So we'll see what happens at that 4th linebacker spot. Maybe they could go light with 3. Like Paul Kaharski had a great point about Quandre Diggs sometimes maybe playing that role. He's up there in age, right? So how much traditional safety could he play? Maybe he does a lot of downhill stuff. Look at Vegas. They've got Jamal Adams, full-time linebacker. So you get to see these older safeties move to linebacker. I think that would be beneficial to the Titans because they've got a lot of safeties and they're short on linebackers. So that would be interesting. I haven't seen it mentioned a lot, but something to monitor maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think those 3 positions we just talked about, defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, are the 3 most likely where an outside player will come in and supplant somebody. But the next position we're about to talk about is also in that mix. As I think all the waiver claims.
I've got it right up here.
Okay. That's valid. I think all waiver claims that happen could come at these 4 positions. We mentioned the outside chance that a tight end or a running back is added. We mentioned the outside chance that they swap quarterbacks if they think someone better becomes available. But as far as I'm projecting, all of the waiver claims are coming to these 4 positions: defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, and cornerback. So let's get into cornerback. I have 5 players sticking on the roster. You have 6. We have the same 5: L'Jarius Sneed, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Roger McCreary, your starters when everyone's healthy, Darrell Baker Jr., and Marcus Harris, because Marcus Harris was just drafted and Baker gave them good snaps last year, and Harris looks like a guy that could give them snaps if called upon this year. You had those 5 plus Gabe Judy Lawley, and this was a very active position for the Titans today. They let 4 guys from this room go on Monday. All 4 of them were undrafted free agents this year: Jalen Kimber, Jamari Harris, Clarence Lewis, and Davion Ross. They don't have any other UDFA corners in the room, so it would be potentially safe to assume that every UDFA corner has been jettisoned and is not a target to bring back on the practice squad. That's to be confirmed. We're not 100% sure about that. The other 2 guys that are still left are Gabe Judy Lawley and Amani Oruwariye, the veteran. I have Gabe Judy Lawley on my practice squad. You have Gabe Judy Lawley on your active roster. Do you think Oruwariye just gets released and is not targeted to bring back at all?
Yeah, I do. I've got, again, this is a big placeholder spot for me, a big one, where I think they're going to claim at least 1 corner. They might even claim more than that, to be honest with you. But I've got Judy Lawley in that placeholder spot. It's down to him or Aurorier, because they cut everybody else. Let me quickly focus on the huge failure. Maybe that's too much, but how many UDFA corners did they bring in? They didn't find a single one worth a lick. They cut 4 of them today, and you're probably forgetting they had like 6 or 7 of them. A bunch of them got cut early in camp. There was like a Garnett Hollis Jr. I think there was a guy named Virgil Lemons, if I'm remembering correctly. There was a safety out of Auburn, like Jaron Johnson. Like, they didn't find any UTFA secondary guys that could play in this league. None of them look like NFL caliber players, to be honest with you. Some of them were brutal in the preseason. I think Aruier was brutal too in the preseason, to be honest with you. But I guess he's made it down to this final battle with Gabe Jeudy-Lally. But I think they're going to claim minimum 1 veteran corner.
See, this is an interesting position to me. Maybe I have rose-colored glasses or two-tone blue-colored glasses on. First of all, I agree. Aruier was terrible in the preseason. I think he's off the roster. Gabe Jeudy-Lally, if you remember from our initial depth chart reaction, was the only player on the entire Titans roster to be listed as depth at multiple positions on the roster. And we know some of these guys are depth at multiple positions. Blake Hance is your backup left guard and your backup right guard. He wasn't listed that way on the depth chart. Gabe Jeudy-Lally was listed as the backup nickel corner and as a backup outside corner, the only player. So I think there's a decent chance they really value his versatility and his skill set. I thought he had a few good plays in the preseason. I thought he had a few plays where he got beat in the preseason as well. You kind of expect that from your 6th cornerback. And here's where I'll say what my potential hot take, rose-colored glasses take is. This is a good room. These are 5 good players. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, if he can be the L'Jarius Sneed he was signed to be, that's obviously TBD. But Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Roger McCreary are above average plus good to great players with potential to be even better. Darrell Baker Jr. is a fine reserve guy who gave them good snaps in a reserve role last year. Has he trended down a little bit this training camp? Maybe so, but the player who gave them good snaps is still in there. And I think even if he gets demoted to playing behind Marcus Harris, who admittedly is a 6th round rookie, and that's a tall task, he looks pretty good, and he's been making plays in training camp and in preseason games. Like, I feel like you can do worse than those 2 guys as your first 2 guys off the bench. Now, if they can add somebody who's like a starting level cornerback, even if like a 3rd starting level cornerback to this room to come in and be the 6th corner, by all means, they should do it. I'm not seeing this as dire as everyone else who covers the team seems to be seeing it. Am I crazy, Justin?
Yeah, I don't think they see it the way you do. I think from, like, I'm going with, something I kind of heard through the grapevine here, that I think 1 minimum claim at cornerback is what I'm gathering. So,
well, I still expect there to be a claim. I expect the 6th guy to come from a claim because I only put 5 on my roster. It feels like everyone out there has been like on Twitter, I see a lot of takes that it's like the Titans need to add a veteran corner. And like, you know what, if they can go sign Asante Samuel Jr., for instance, then by all means add that veteran corner. But is somebody who gets cut from another roster going to be better than Gabe Jeudy-Lally? Maybe, but how much better? A guy they value the versatility of? Like, I don't know. I'm a little surprised at what the view of the Titans cornerback room is by the people close to the team.
I think it's kind of similar internally. From what I'm gathering, I think there's going to be, we both expect minimum 1 claim, but I'll be honest, I only expected 1 claim. Maybe that's going to be right, but from what I understand, it's within the realm of possibility that it's more than that.
Wow. Okay. Well, we will move on to the safety position where we have the same 5 projected players making the team: Amani Hooker, Xavier Woods, Kevin Winston Jr., Quandre Diggs, and this was a big one, a big toss-up, I think, but I ended up keeping Mike Brown on the roster. I know you were very tempted to put Julius Wood on the roster, Justin. Unfortunately for you and your fandom there and your personal attachment to Julius Wood was the 16th and final player Julius Wood and Joshua Bledsoe were the 15th and 16th, not necessarily in that order, but as we go through the roster. Final players cut on Monday. Kendall Brooks is still around. Yep. And he's the only guy that you and I don't have on our active roster from the safety group that is still around. I have him on the practice squad, and I believe you do too. I think that he's a guy they'd love to have around developing and potentially, being activated if somebody gets injured. But Mike Brown, there's a lot of talk, especially between you and I, about Mike Brown potentially being cut for a Julius Wood or a Kendall Brooks. Mike Brown is still the personal protector on the punt team, and I think we underrate how important that role is, especially for a team that watched multiple punts get blocked last season. Like, this is a guy who calls out the protections before the ball is snapped on the punt team and has to identify where the potential pressure is coming from. That's an important role. I think they keep Mike Brown in that role, even if he doesn't play a snap on defense. And at the same time, he gave them pretty good snaps on defense last year too. So I think Mike Brown makes the team and Brooks ends up on the practice squad. Wood and Bledsoe have already been cut.
Yeah, I think Wood was probably the most surprising cut of Monday. Like, I thought he was good enough to at least make it to Tuesday if he was going to be cut. But remember, someone brought this to my attention on Twitter, like phenomenal job by them. And they did this days ago. He was suspended 6 games towards the end of last year. And he only, it was late. So he missed 5 last year. So he's got a 1-game suspension to serve this year in week 1. So maybe that played a role in the decision there to just kind of move on rather quickly. I think they were going to keep 5 safeties at, unless they go light elsewhere, maybe they keep 6. But I think that 5th spot, obviously we know, is now down to Mike Brown or Kendall Brooks. I give Brown the nod for the same reason you did, the special teams versatility and experience. But Kendall Brooks has had a good training camp, good preseason. He's obviously very much in that mix, at least making it to Tuesday. And if he doesn't make it, would love to have Kendall Brooks back on the practice squad.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be the most surprising thing, even though neither of us are projecting it. It wouldn't be shocking to see him make the team over Mike Brown, and they just use the next 2 weeks to teach somebody else how to be the personal protector. That's potentially in play, but I think the way it's trending right now, we're going to go with Mike Brown. Special teams, we have the exact same special teams because there's no competition here. The Titans only had 1 kicker, 1 punter, and 1 long snapper in camp. Joey Slye, Johnny Hecker, Morgan Cox round out our roster projections. That takes me to 51 players. It takes you to 53 players. I only kept 22 players on defense. And this whole exercise was a bit eye-opening at just how bad the depth is on the defensive side of the ball. Like how many players I felt like weren't even worth keeping. Do the Titans do something absolutely bonkers, Justin, and only keep 21 guys on defense, and they keep 8 receivers, and they keep Xavier Restrepo, and they hold on to him until Wednesday or Thursday or Friday when they eventually get swapped out for a waiver claim? Like, is there anything crazy? Do you expect to see anything crazy like that over the next couple of days, or is tomorrow, Tuesday, going to be more cut and dry than that?
I mean, they're going to make a ton of moves Wednesday, maybe Thursday. So, and who they decide to keep, I think there's a possibility that the numbers look weird at first because this is an ugly business, and you're in it for yourself in terms of the teams are in it for themselves, obviously, right? It breaks their heart to do this and stuff, but they're in it for themselves. So the guys that they keep, that they plan to cut Wednesday, no doubt about it, are guys they're hoping to get on the practice squad. So they'll do it that way where the number might look weird at first. Maybe it's an 8th wide receiver that they're going to cut because for a 5th defensive tackle. You know what I mean? Because they think 8th wide receiver has a better chance of getting claimed by someone else than the 5th defensive tackle does. What happens when you make those moves on Wednesday instead of Tuesday? A lot of teams have already made their moves. Guys get lost in the shuffle. I don't got room for this guy. You're able to sneak a guy through a bit easier than you do if you cut him on a Monday or even Tuesday. So it's going to get a little weird potentially, but it'll even out by Wednesday or Thursday once they make those waiver claims and put those final 4 or 5 cuts through. Because make no mistake, they're claiming 4. That's my expectation. It's 4 or 5. Yes, I think up to 7 is within the realm of possibility, but I do think that would be a little nuts. I'll only be totally stunned if it's 8 or 9. I mean, that's ludicrous. I think it's going to be 4 or 5 waiver claims. Strap in because it's going to be a crazy couple days here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it could be multiple defensive tackles or edge players, could be multiple inside linebackers or cornerbacks. I expect the majority of the claims, again, to be at those positions. And if you're following this along closely, I did reveal an entire 17-man prediction for the practice squad. If Thomas Odukoya is included, they get to keep 17. If Thomas Odukoya is not included, then they only get to keep 16, and then it will be the other 16 guys that I said. And if you missed it, I'm not going to read it again. It's up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Sorry for the crude graphics, a little pressed for time today. It's just a screenshot of a Google Doc. It's not actually a designed graphic. I apologize. But it's a busy season right now. Justin and I both working full-time jobs. We had to squeeze this recording into our day, but it actually worked out because we got these 16 cuts in. We were going to do this morning, but we got these 16 cuts in. So I'm not mad about it that we got to come to you guys a little bit later, but graphics are crude. Sorry for that. Any final thoughts, Justin? Should we tell the people what's coming up the rest of this week?
Now, I'll be really busy tomorrow, most likely, with breaking more Titans news, roster news. So make sure you're following me on Twitter at JustinM_NFL. I broke 6 of the 16 today. I don't think that's too bad of a batting average. Probably have a bunch more tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow live, I think is the plan, at 1 p.m. Central We assume a lot of moves will have trickled in by then. If not, we'll just continue having discussions and filling the time. And you guys can ask us questions. Please, if that's the case, if nothing's happened, we'll go live, talk about what's to come, answer a bunch of questions that you may or may not have. We'll make up questions if you don't, but we're pretty confident you're going to have questions. Plan to do that for about half an hour around that time. And I might be getting news while we're live, so we'll see how that goes. The phone might be ringing, might be text message, you might hear a ping. Or Graver will ding me. That could be the ping that you're going to hear instead of a text message. But then we'll come back, I think, Wednesday, a little bit later, because that's when the waiver claim process, I think, hits around 3 or 4 p.m. Eastern. And we want to be able to react to that. So we'll be back Wednesday with an episode. I don't think live, although you and I can discuss that. Yeah, not live as you nod your head. Or we can discuss it as you nod your head the other way now. We'll be back on Wednesday. So one episode Tuesday, one episode Wednesday. Tuesdays will definitely be live. Wednesdays probably won't be. It'll come to you a little later because we'll want the waiver claims to have been out by then. So a lot of content coming your way on the Music City Audible these next couple of days.
And then hopefully we have a practice squad on Thursday to react to. If not, we might wait for that on Friday. TBD. We'll have a clearer picture of what the end of the week looks like by Wednesday when we're back. So make sure, again, you are subscribed to the channel, like this video, drop a comment below, send the link to this podcast to all your friends, every single one. Just bother them. Just be like, hey, I'm sorry I keep sending you the link to this Music City Audible podcast, but I'm going to keep sending it to you until you check it out, because these two guys, they make a good show. At least we hope that that's what you would say about us. I wouldn't say that about ourselves, Justin. That's a little cocky, but I hope that you guys think that, because that is our goal at the end of the day. All right, until tomorrow's live stream, thanks again to Sinkers Beverages. Thanks again to you all. You all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.